much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Anytime I get to sit down with you, I walk away inspired and educated. So I'm looking forward to it.
I feel the same way about you. Now, first, let's get through this whole schedule thing that you're living through. Thank you for joining us the day after the South Carolina game. I know that was a tough one, a tough bus ride back to Athens. And then this morning you got waken up by your two little girls. That's got to soften some of the blows from last night. Does it, Joni?
I'm telling you, it puts everything in perspective. I flipped on the light switch and my 4-year-old JC, I said, it's time to get up. And she said, Mommy, is that you? Are you really here? And so it just melts your heart. It softens anything that could be hard around your heart or in your mind. And it's a really swift reminder of what's important.
You and your husband, Darius, have a unique situation, both as coaches, both coaching at different levels and coaching in different seasons, the same sport. So it kind of balances out, right? How do you guys make it work? Because I know you get this asked a lot. Darius is an assistant coach with the Atlanta Dream. You're the head coach at Georgia.
Right. A lot of prayer is the first thing I'll say. We lean on God a lot. And then our parents are both amazing. His parents are actually with us now from Chicago. They come, they're not down as often as my parents are, but when they do come, they stay for a huge chunk of time, Debbie. So they got here maybe right after the new year, and they'll probably stay through the SEC tournament. So they stay for a month or two at a time. And when they're not here, my parents both are with us in Georgia. So we have at all times one of our parents living with us to help with the girls and just our schedule. We live off of a Google Calendar that is just updated, live. So I see everything that he has going on and vice versa. And it takes work because there are times where we are like two ships passing in the night. I mean, we text more than we sometimes have face-to-face conversations. But we just really try to stay locked in and tuned into each other as much as possible. And try to figure it out. So it's nice that in normal seasons, the family travels with me, and that's a blessing. And that's, again, I tip my hat to Georgia for allowing us to do that. So it helps because your family is with you. Obviously, during this COVID year, we made the decision not to do that, just to keep everybody safe and protect our bubble. So it has been difficult not having them on the road, but it's also nice to know that when he's in his off season, he can fully support me. And when we're in our off season, we can, I can fully support him. Atlanta's an easy drive. It's easy to get to. It was challenging. Obviously, he was in the bubble this summer with the WNBA. So that was different. I think we were sending him care packages like twice a week. But we just make it work. I'm super happy for him because, as you know, he walked away from South Carolina when I became the head coach. And that was a tough decision to make, and it was his decision alone. But to see him now be rewarded and get to coach, he's an incredible coach. He knows the game so well. He just is an excellent developer of talent and just, people. And so I'm happy for him. And so anytime that we're going to do whatever we can to make each other happy and to make it work.
Amen to that. I know I can tell you after all these years of marriage and 3 kids, and now my kids are a little bit older and college age and out of college and in college, that thought of having a day off still hasn't really crossed my mind. There really isn't a day off, is there, Joni? I mean, not from your schedule with work, not from your family life. Like people, I'm still waiting for the day that I can go to the beach actually with a chair and a book. That hasn't happened yet.
And Karen keeps telling me, my associate head coach, Karen Lang, her two are teenagers now, and they were in elementary school when they came to Athens. She goes, it's going to get easier. It's going to get easier. Now they're always going to want you, but there will come a time where they can put on their own clothes and fix their own food, and you can come in and take a bit of a breath. Because right now, when I get up, we help get them ready. We drive them into school. Their learning lab is literally on campus and across the street from our gym. So I'm fortunate to be able to be close to them, drive them into school most days. But when I get home at night, it's 3 people waiting for me. That's JC, Drew, and the dog. They hear the garage door open up. And as soon as I hit the door, they are all 3 standing there. One's barking and 2 are mommy, mommy, mommy. And Darius is like, guys, let her put her bags down. Let her get settled. So you constantly feel that you're being pulled, and it is a good feeling, but you also sometimes are like, ooh, I'd just love to pick up a book and sit on the couch.
So I experienced this, and I'm sure that you do at times. And, you know, as parents and as mothers that have careers and travel and work, you know, not to throw my husband under the bus, because I would never do that, but it was always easy to throw some chicken nuggets on. And then when I was around, I always felt the need to cook just so that I knew they were getting some vegetables and stuff like that. I mean, is that happening with Darius? I'm not trying to kill the guy because I know he's awesome.
Yep.
But, you know, sometimes they get the gold star, but we never get a break.
You know, fortunately for us, one of our parents usually prepares the meal. But yes, he will, you know, throw some fries in the oven. He's a great on the grill. He can, you know, microwave some steamables. And for me, that is great. I, being from Mississippi, as you know, I'm used to, like, if it came out of a can, it doesn't count. Like, that's kind of how I was raised. That's how my mom and dad both
Right.
cook. Like, everything is fresh cut. And early on, I got over this with JC, because a lot of my friends who had young kids, they were like, yeah, I puree their food and I do this and I do that. And so I had all these thoughts of what that was going to look like. And as soon as I stopped breastfeeding and she got to the point where she could eat real food, I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Gerber, whatever we're going to get, like, that's going to work. They're going to be fine. Like, they're smart, they're thriving, you know? And so I have to fight the urge to want to come home and be this perfect mom in terms of getting something cooked on the stove. Now, if I have time to do that on the Sunday before I go to practice, I'll do that. Now that we're in season, that's out of the window. But I fought with that the first 6-7 months, and now I'm just completely over it.
You and I have been around the game a long time, and you've been around the SEC in many different capacities. And I remember a time when family wasn't allowed to travel, that there were a lot of times where athletic departments just didn't either budget for it or didn't see that it was an important priority for the head coach. Now, how do you see it now? You know, with the resources, like you said, Georgia has allowed you to travel with your family under normal circumstances.
I look at our situation. I look at Nikki Fargas at LSU, and when she comes here to Athens, Justice is right there with her. You know, I look at a lot of coaches last year at the SEC tournament. We're passing by Kentucky. They're coming off the floor for a practice, and we're going on the floor. And Jackson is right there with Kyra, and she's an associate head coach at that time, not even the head coach, and her family's traveling. I think we've come a long way. I think back to when I was a player, and to my knowledge, Pat Summitt was the only head coach who I even knew had a son, Tyler. You know, I'm sure there were more, but Tyler was visible. The other, you know, kids of coaches weren't female, you know, that I would say. And so what I learned from my coach, Rick Moody, even though Ben did not travel with us, Ben was always around. If it was the weekend, Ben came to practice. Ben's birthday was in June. And so during camp, we stopped to celebrate Ben's birthday. So I learned, you know, from him how to share those special moments, because you're just pulled away so much. But we've come a long way in terms of seeing families with parents. And that's a tribute to the SEC, to our institutions, to understand the value we have. And I think it's important because women need to be in college basketball. Women need to be in basketball at every level, NBA, college, men, women. And in order for that to happen, there's got to be some flexibility in terms of our family feeling like, and seeing a picture of, I can do this because I can bring my family with me. When I was a young assistant, I don't know how many conversations I would have with other assistants, really good assistants, female, on the road. And they were just worried about, there's going to come a time when I get married that I don't know if I can do both. And they left the business because of it. And we lost a lot of young, really good assistant coaches, because instead of waiting to see what would happen, they made the decision to just do something different because they did not see a vision of it being possible to balance both.
I 100% agree, because I remember coming up when I didn't see any women that had children that took them on the road or even had children at all, because the time and the responsibility of trying to raise kids and raise your team, basically, because that's what you're doing with 18 to 22-year-old young women. You're raising them. Joni, you and I also share another commonality. We are on the Collegiate Coaching Diversity Pledge Alliance Committee. For lack of a better way of saying that, we are responsible for making sure that we help athletic directors see the need and the importance in balancing and hiring practices with diversity and inclusion. That's a responsibility that I know you and I take very seriously. And I know for me, for decades, I've been trying to help athletic directors place coaches or find coaches in just my little way of doing it, on the side. When you were approached about the opportunity to share some responsibility in this pledge, if you will, which is actually a pledge that athletic directors sign, committing that they will make sure it's not just, I'm just going to interview somebody over here because they check off the boxes for race, diversity, inclusion, all that. But this is actually a responsibility to make sure you carry it through to a high degree. What's your
Right.
feeling on being asked to be a part of that?
Honored, humbled. When I got approached and saw who was already on the committee and on the board, I was like, good Lord, why do they need me? They've got it figured out. But obviously said yes. I think it is about bringing awareness. I say all the time, there's two things that are happening. One thing is you hire who you know. And if you don't know anyone outside of your circle, then it looks the same. Or you hire who has been recommended to you by someone in your circle. So again, if your circle all looks the same, those are the recommendations that you get. So in some ways, it's bringing awareness. And in some cases, it is intentional. And so it's about bringing awareness to helping out, accountability, because part of this pledge is being open about obviously protecting the confidentiality of who interviewed, but being open about showing the steps that you took in order to try to create a diverse and inclusive environment. And that doesn't mean that you end up hiring a minority, but it means that you were very thorough and intentional. And it wasn't, like you said, a check the box. I'm going to pull in this candidate just so I can say that I interviewed a minority, whether that's a female, Black female, brown female, whatever that looks like. So I'm extremely honored. I'm proud to be a part of it. And I think the biggest thing is just continuing to push and to also, what is the right way to say, to correct the assumptions that are made in terms of, from a legal standpoint, this is not good for our university, so we don't want to do it. Or we already have checks and balances here. If we had the right checks and balances, Debbie, then we wouldn't need the diversity pledge that we have. And so it's also about helping to dispel those rumors of, well, from an ethics standpoint or from a HIPAA standpoint, there's no way this would fly. So I was, advised not to do it. And so it's being knowledgeable about what actually the pledge does so that you can help counteract those remarks when they come from athletic directors or SWAs for that matter.
I know you're a big relationship builder, and I know you're big on networking. And I know from our time together as friends, colleagues, somewhat peers. I mean, I'm older than you, and I'm not a coach, but I am 100% invested in the game and as a stakeholder caring about the game moving forward. And one of the things that I get asked a lot is about networking. Joni, you did a really good job of networking and not ever overstepping your bounds as an assistant or an associate head coach with your head coach, but also making it clear that you did want to be a head coach one day. And you had options. You had to just wait to see what was the right option and what was going to fit with your own personal puzzle. When people say networking, and you're talking about circle, how can young coaches or coaches that are listening that don't have a diverse circle, that are looking to make a relationship with somebody that maybe could help them grow or understand or develop in other areas? I'm big on networking. I think that's a really important part of what we do. How do you feel about that whole long, drawn out, run on sentence that I just threw at you?
I think it's extremely important. I think the first thing that needs to happen is you have to have an understanding and a conversation with your head coach. I talked to so many assistants, and even when I was an assistant, there were so many other assistants who were afraid to have a conversation with their head coach about wanting to become a head coach, and even having a conversation with administrators at their institution because they didn't want it to appear a certain way. And I said, well, if you've had an open conversation with your head coach, then it shouldn't, because you should be on the same page. And so I think the first thing that has to happen is you have to, a lot of times I felt like as an assistant, just because something is presented to you, it doesn't mean it's the right fit for you, even as an assistant. So be intentional about who you work for, because that has a lot to do with how you're going to be able to navigate your networking opportunities. Once you've established that, when you go to symposiums, when you go to the Final Four, when you're watching a podcast, there's nothing wrong with sending an email or writing a note saying, I really enjoyed listening to you at the Final Four talk on so-and-so. I really enjoyed, you at a step up or on Debbie's podcast. This quote really jumped out at me. Thank you so much. I keep every single one of those. I take a picture of it. I put it in a file. I try to respond to all of them, but it carries a lot of weight. I think the other thing in terms of your circle is it's got to look different than you. Like my mentors are not all Black females, because there's some that are Black females, but we often share the same perspective. So again, if all I'm doing is talking to somebody who looks like me, then how am I going to get the full picture? And the accurate information for that matter. So I was also very intentional about building my board of trustees, as a lot of people call it, very diverse: a Black female, a white female, a Black male, a white male, administrators of different, ethnicities, because it's important to have a full picture. And depending on the situation, I call on different people to get advice. So I think it's important to be intentional about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And then the other thing that I tried to do, and this is actually something Coach Landers encouraged me to do. He said, while you are traveling, when we're on the road, figure out, if there's an SWA at a peer institution that you admire or that you would like to talk to, try to have coffee with them. Try to meet with them on the day of the game or the night before if it's a weekday game, and just reach out and say you're coming to town. You watch them from afar. That's a great way, because a lot of times SWAs, Senior Deputy Director of Athletics, are going to end up becoming athletic directors somewhere else. And a lot of those high-level administrators are at your institution now. And so when they move on and go somewhere else, even if they weren't at your institution, if they're in your conference and you've made that connection, then you're going to remember them and they're going to remember you. And so those are just some things that I try to be intentional about doing. And it needed to make sense. Like, you don't want to be overbearing and bother people, but when you can take advantage of an opportunity of a team getting a good win and reaching out and say, hey, your women's team got a great win last night. Congratulations, keep it going. That's relevant. It doesn't seem random. Again, when you hear somebody speak at a symposium or on a podcast, on a Zoom, send them an email, send them a note, have something attached to it that you are complimenting them on or asking them about, so it doesn't just seem self-serving.
I'm hoping that the people that are listening to this podcast are going to send you, at least you're going to hear from 10 people at least. I'm going to give it just a small number to start with, but
I'll let you know.
Let me know, because I will be interested in how many people reach out from a networking standpoint. I do think it's really important. Okay, you mentioned Andy Landers. All right, let's talk about Andy for a second. A lot of people say replacing a legend is really, really challenging. And it did take you a minute to get going, but now look where your program is, a top 25 program, taking South Carolina to the end last night in a game that you played in Columbia. When you're trying to take on an incredible legacy, if you even look at it that way, I mean, do you take small bites, or are you taking a big bite right from the beginning?
You know what? It is, people, I heard all the time, oh my gosh, it's like when you take over at Texas, at Tennessee, whoever takes over at UConn, Rutgers, Georgia, like that is a tall task. And it was I'm going to say it this way. It has its challenges because of what Georgia basketball is, and the expectation and the gratitude that I have, and the responsibility that I feel like everyone in this program has to keep Georgia at that level and enhance what Coach Landers and all of the former players did. It has been extremely easy because of Coach Landers. He and I obviously have a great relationship. That is not a secret. We talk all the time, 2 or 3 times a week. But he wanted it to be a smooth transition for whoever. He was always very clear about, this is Georgia basketball. This is not Andy Landers. And so he never wanted the credit. He almost didn't come to the press conference, Debbie, when I got the job, because he did not want anybody to interview him or it become about him. And I had to beg him to come. And I was like, if they do interview you, I don't care. Like, and so he's very cautious and very careful about making sure that no one shifts the spotlight to him or tries to make it about him, because he always had the understanding that this is not my program. This is their program. This is Georgia basketball. This is all the players' program. And because he had that perspective, it has been an incredibly smooth transition for me in terms of not feeling like somebody is looking over my shoulder, having conversations with former players or administrators, and making it more difficult, because the challenges of continuing to do what was already done in this day and age where there's so much parity now in our sport are already hard enough. And so it is totally because of him and his foresight and just his humility and how he approached this program when he took over in 1979 that has allowed me to focus on the main thing, which is continuing to recruit, build our brand, and coach these young ladies, and not worry about all the other outside forces and noise that could come when you have a retired coach who still lives in the same town or city that you're coaching in and who is ever present. He has just been really tremendous in that way.
You're going into a Zoom call with a recruit, or you're trying to get somebody to watch your game on TV. What are 2 or 3 things about your team that you absolutely want people to see when they watch your team play?
Our chemistry jumps off the page. Our culture, you can see it in our if you look at our bench, you can see it in the 5 young ladies that are on the floor representing us at that time. It's the first thing I want them to be able to see. The second thing is that we play really, really hard on both ends of the floor, and it's a fun style of basketball. So we're going to defend. We put that out there from the very beginning, and there's a lot of things that come with playing defense in terms of just who you have to be and having a commitment to wanting to do that, because it's important in this league. If you don't defend, and you don't have a shot. And then we talk about having the chance to put your offensive skills on display. If you watch us, you're going to see us be able to put a lot of different styles on the floor. We can run fast. We can play a half court game. We can play a guard game. We can play a forward game. And you need all of those pieces if you want to compete in the Southeastern Conference. And so those are some of the conversations that we have that we want them to pay attention to initially when they're watching us play. And then as they watch us more, we obviously get into more details of this is how we would use you in this action, or this is what we think you could do for our team. And obviously get into more details, but at the beginning, it's about watch how much fun we have, watch how much we love each other, watch how hard we play, because if you don't play hard, you can't come here. And then knowing that we're going to have a lot of different styles that we can put on the floor and play.
We are coming off of We Back Pat week, and you played against Pat, you've coached against her. And instead of asking you about a particular story about Pat, because I'm sure we could go all day about stories about Pat, but I want to know from your perspective, what was the 1 or 2 things about going against Pat or preparing for Pat as a player or a coach that you absolutely had to be buttoned up on, or else you were going to get blown out?
Always rebounding. Her teams have always, and even now, Tennessee is just always been tremendous rebounding the basketball. And then getting them into a half court game. They run really well. Their transition's really good. And so it was forcing them into a half court game. I think the other thing that you have to be buttoned up on is personnel, because there's so many talented players and so much talent when you look at Tennessee rosters, that you had to own your individual matchup as best you could. And so in order to do that, you have to know personnel and tendencies, because where are you bringing help from? When I played, it was the 3 Meeks. I played against Holtzclaw for 2 years and guarded Tamika Catchings for 4 years. And Samika Randall was right there too. So who are you going to help off of in that scenario? So you better know your personnel and try to defend as best as possible.
The SEC went through a phase where Pat just completely dominated. There'd be Andy would be, right there. Joe Champy at Auburn would be right there. And now the SEC has Dawn Staley, and Dawn has turned into the sort of the dominant program. Like, No disrespect to anyone else. It's just the way that program has been built. What can you pull away from having just played them, that knowing that this might be a standard in the SEC right now that you have to be able to play with to be able to win, that can help your team moving forward? Because you are a top 25 team, you are a balanced team, you do have very good guard play. And then Jenna Stady at the rim has been fantastic all year.
Right. I think it's just continuing to build. So this year is the first year I felt like we've had the depth that we want to have. If you look at South Carolina, that's the first thing that has jumped off the page for the last 2 or 3 years with them, is that their starting five is tremendous, but then her next five could be starting somewhere else. And so she's got a 10-player rotation that could start anywhere in the country. So there's no let up when she subs. And this is the first year that I feel like we have been close to that. And then just the mentality of like, we're going to win. Like there's no doubt in their mind that they're going to win when they step onto the floor. And that's something that you see and you feel when you watch them play, when you're playing against them. They just have a mentality of, we know we're going to win. We know we're supposed to be here. And that's something that we still are working towards. We have gotten much better. Our win at Tennessee was a great win for us, for that fact that we felt like even when we were down 15, we knew we could win that game. And we've just got to continue to learn and get some of that in us and continue to create the depth that she has. And, you know, John Wooden said it best. It's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmys and Joes. And she's got not Jimmys and Joes over there, but her young ladies are very, very talented and were pros when they got to her program, and have just continued to work and get better.
When you look at the overall picture of where our game is right now, I want to ask you a broad picture question, Joni, because I think you'll have great insight on this. There's a theory out there that with the transfer portal, that all of a sudden some of these kids might be taking their talents to South Beach. You know what I mean? Like they already are sort of connected through summer basketball. Unlike when we were growing up, you know, you didn't know the other team. You weren't friends with somebody on the other team. You might have played with them or against them in high school, but you know, you didn't have the kind of camaraderie that there is in the game today. So when you think about that concept of transfer portal, there's benefits, there's negatives to it. And the way you got to handle your own teams now and balance, you know, the tough love part of it. Do you think that we're headed towards a supermodel like that would be taking our talents to South Beach?
It concerns me for sure, for a lot of reasons. I think in some ways it creates the mentality of they're half in, half out, even when they show up on campus. I mean, we've heard a lot of young ladies, not here at Georgia, but other places, say, you know, when they call us even to say they've chosen another school, well, you know, let's continue to talk. I'm like, well, we're not going to talk to you. They just have it in their back pocket, or their coaches will say, well, if it didn't work out, she can always transfer. Like that's already in their head when they step on campus. And so that was never an option for me. It was never an option for you. It was, this is where you chose to go to school. This is where you're going to
would
go.
Your parents have let you, Joni? I mean, would your parents have said, like mine were like, you start, you don't quit. You gotta figure it out.
I can remember calling home in my dorm room, going down and waiting in line to use the phone and calling my parents to like say, oh my gosh, like not that I wanted to leave, but like this is so tough. Like I'm not playing right now. And it was suck it up, you know, figure it out, suck it up. We believe that Coach Moody and his staff are the right people for you. You know, you're around the right people, figure it out. And that's what worries me. Not even because it could hurt us as a program or hurt schools. I worry of what it does to these young women who are never going to learn to tough anything out and figure it out if they can just bounce from one place to another and then play immediately. At least before it was, well, I'm going to have to sit out a year. And do I want to do that? And then the waiver process created all of this confusion and so much work for the NCAA that it's just, okay, we're going to give everybody now. We're going to take ourselves out of it. We don't want to deal with waivers, so everybody can go and play immediately. And I just think it sets them up for failure down the road. And so that concerns me from that standpoint. However, I do understand at times that there is you could have gotten yourself into a bad situation It's why in the recruiting process, we really stress asking the tough questions and not getting caught up in the name on the front of the jersey or the graphics and the mail outs that you get. Like, get to the meat and potatoes of who you're thinking about going to. And because everybody is so connected now with social media, you can find out. We tell our recruits, when they were allowed to go on campus, we would say, don't just talk to the young lady that's hosting you. She was partnered with you for a reason. Talk to number 15 on the bench that doesn't play. Talk to the walk-on. How do they get treated? Your parents should be asking, well, how often do the young ladies come to your house? Is it only for official visits, or are they welcome anytime? How often do you go eat with your head coach if relationship is important to you? And so I think it's about being intentional during the recruiting process, to try to keep those things from happening and not getting yourself into a situation or being misled and then getting somewhere and realizing it's not what you thought. But we have obviously taken transfers, and that has worked out well for us, but we are still very intentional when we do that. It just concerns me for what are we teaching our young people if they can hop around and get out of something before really seeing it through. There's something about seeing things through and coming out on the other side of it that builds you as a person, that builds you as a woman. And that concerns me for our youth.
I want to ask you one more thing, Joni, and then I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been such an enlightening, inspiring, uplifting. I mean, you're better than 2 cups of coffee in the morning. I can tell you that
Well,
right now. I want to know your relationship with your mother now that you are a mother, and now that you serve in a role in mentoring these young women that you have on your campus. Like, when I first became a mother, my relationship with my mom changed completely because I couldn't believe what I had done, put her through, how it works, whatever, all of it, you know. And now, fortunately, I still have my mom and my dad, and you have your mom and your dad, but it's specifically your mom. What has she meant to you? How do you transfer what you've learned as a mother, and then how do you use it to help raise your own 2 daughters with Darius and with your team?
that's a great question. I've had a lot of reflection about this, so I'm really glad you asked. My mom and I have always had a really good relationship. She, from a young age, she knew I was going to be tall. She's 5'11". My dad's 6'3". My brother's 6'4". So she always, put me in ballet so I could stand tall and be graceful, and tall is beautiful. And so I was always very confident. My mom, just to give you backstory, she started out as an AP biology teacher, and then she got into administration, and she finished as deputy superintendent of the school system in Meridian. So doing that, I watched her, obviously she had her master's, when I was born, but then she worked on her PhD. So she was doing all that, and she was still traveling twice a week to Mississippi State to work on her PhD and her doctorate. And she missed a lot. My dad was there. He played basketball in college at a junior college before going on to and graduating from Mississippi Valley State. And so, I was a daddy's girl. I was a tomboy. So he was around. He came to all my games, all my track meets. And my mom obviously was there when she could be, but there were some things that she missed. And I don't want to say I had resentment for that. I just felt like she maybe didn't think it was as important. And so now, obviously, being in that same position, I have come back to her and said, like, I get it. It wasn't that you did not want to be there. It wasn't that you didn't see it as value. You were trying to put us in a position to be better. And what I realize now is that everything that I am in terms of how I work and how I approach my career is because I watched my mom do it. My mom, I was born in 79. So in the early 80s, it wasn't very common for the wife to be the breadwinner in the family. And my mom was that. They both started out as teachers. My dad had opportunities to get into administration, but he loved the classroom. So he stayed an AP history teacher. My mom took that opportunity, and it flipped the income in our house in terms of her being the breadwinner. And when I look at how that parallels what I'm doing now, I would have never had the courage, foresight, being from Mississippi, even to step out of that box and think that was okay for me to do if it had not been for her example. And so I'm just extremely grateful that she was a pioneer in so many ways, and it gave me the confidence subconsciously to know that I could do the same thing. She always told my brother and I that no dream is too big, and we believed her. And so much of who I am is because of what I watched her do, not even knowing that she was giving me those nuggets at the time.
It's an empowering feeling for you more than it is 100% guilt for what you do with your girls.
Yes.
Joni, that's really inspiring, and I can't wait to meet your mom and dad. The next time we're on the road and we're able to call a game at Georgia, I'm going to be looking for your mom and dad. Hopefully they'll be in town helping you out with your daughters and helping you and Darius. And I can't thank you enough for your time. This was awesome. You're fantastic. You've done such a great job building the program and putting your team back in the top 25 and in the national spotlight. And I can't wait to see what happens as the rest of the season goes on.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for all your texts. I appreciate how you check in and what you do for our sport and the game of women's basketball. Keep using your voice. Thank you so much.
That's Joni Taylor, the head coach at Georgia. Pepper, you make everyone smile with your engaging personality and your big, huge smile, and you're just so fun to be around. Thank you so much for being with us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I need to know in general, because I don't get to hang out with many 9-year-olds anymore. Just kind of like, how'd your day go today with school?
My day was pretty good. We started on a book project. We just finished a book. We're studying immigration. We're working on measurements and math. So we talked about miles and kilometers. And we had PE, and we had performing arts, and we talked a little bit about different types of music and the way you can use different musical instruments to make different types of music. And I just my violin class. I'm preparing for a recital on Sunday. So yeah, overall, today was a good day.
Before we jump into sports, I love that you're so broad-based in your educational experience, Pepper. I mean, you can just snap up what you did in a day, and you have such a busy schedule. How's the violin lessons going?
Oh, they're going good. I just started the second book in Suzuki, which is what I'm working on. So that's super big, and so I just passed the first book, and I'm super excited. But me and my teacher, we went through everything that we need to go over for the recital. That's on Sunday, because our classes are every Tuesday. So this is my closest class to the recital, and I'm super excited.
What is the recital about on Sunday? Are you playing a whole concert, or are you just playing
Oh, no,
are you a soloist?
Yeah, so I'm playing a piece with I'm playing Gavat from the first Suzuki book, and I'm playing it with the piano recording that my teacher made. It's a solo, so it's a violin solo, not much, and it's just all of my teacher's students. We all get to perform a piece that we've been working on, the most recent one and the best one for us. So yeah. We do it. There's winter and spring recitals, so yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm so excited for you. When I was a little girl, I played the trumpet, and I played the trumpet for 6 years. And so I was in the elementary school band, and then, we had concerts and things like that. And then when I got to high school, when it was time to decide sports or marching band, it was a pretty easy decision for me. Hopefully you won't have to do that. You can keep your musical career going, because music and sports actually go together. There's a rhythm to the way we do things in sports, right? I mean,
Yeah.
How do you see that? How do you see music and sports fitting?
Well, firstly, it's like you mentioned, the rhythm. And also, you can't play a piece without having rhythm or understanding the way the notes work. And you can't win a game without having the plays down and understanding what your coach wants you to do. And so it's kind of similar in that respect. But yeah, like you said, the rhythm, and also just that it's not easy to do either thing. It's not easy to play the instrument. It's not easy to play a sport. Just you have to put in practice, which is it's that is a trait of a lot of things, a lot of activities, but specifically for music and sports, those things are very important.
I love the way you think, Pepper. I love the way you have energy to everything that you do. So we're speaking about rhythm. How's the rhythm of your jump shot? How's your jumper?
It's pretty pretty good. I don't know, but it's just I don't know how to say it. Can I show it to you?
Yeah, show me how your jumper is.
Let's see. I have a basketball over here. All right. I have like 12-foot ceilings, but
That looks pretty good.
thank
Nice
you.
follow through. The ball's on the right side of your body.
Yeah.
You bend, I look at the shot as the lower part. You bend your body, coil, uncoil is what I teach when I'm in the gym. You coil and then you uncoil, and you're doing that. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so you have become my friend through the summer. Like, we met recently and we became fast friends. And one of the things that I really enjoy about you is you make me feel energetic and you give me purpose with what I do, because I want to be a role model for somebody like you. And I think you're watching what people like me and some others that do my job are doing, because that's something that you would like to do one day. Is that right?
Yeah. I have this super kind of specific dream to play in the WNBA and then to cover the WNBA after I retire and after a successful career. So, yeah, that is my dream.
You have started since you were 6 years old covering WNBA teams. How did that come about? What was your passion for? What did you want to learn? Why did you decide that that was something you wanted to do?
Well, the first actual interview I did was based off of my pure curiosity. Because at that point, my dream was to be in the WNBA, and I just love basketball, and I wanted to learn more about what they do in an everyday, what they do day to day. And so that interview was of Sugar Rogers, and it was just such an amazing experience. But I feel like the first time I really covered the WNBA was when I was 7, and I wanted to bring more attention to the league because I knew that there needed to be more viewers on the league because they were incredible basketball players. And so I did a series of interviews that are on my YouTube, and I just was able to learn from them as well, just like my original goal for my first interview, to learn more, but also I hope that I brought maybe even a few more eyes to the WNBA.
Oh, I'm sure you did. And you've also brought some eyes on yourself because of the way you cover the league. You're such a great little professional. I've been on Zoom calls where you ask great questions, and they're questions that involve research, and you have, delved into different topics in the league. So I want to ask you let's continue with this theme about media for a second, because I know that that's something that you said that you're interested in. As a 9-year-old, how do you cover the WNBA?
Um, wow, that's interesting phrasing. I've never actually been asked a question like that before. Let's see. Well, how do I cover the WNBA? Well, I hope that people can see that I cover it with joy. It's not something that I feel burdened to do. Something that I really enjoy, being in press conferences, asking questions, and something that I'm passionate about. Something that I really care about. I care about the WNBA, and I care about what they're doing, and I care about that their voices are being heard. And that's part of the reason why the WNBA was one of the first things that I knew I wanted to cover. Once I started realizing that I could actually pursue this as an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, right? So I think that I try to cover the WNBA with joy and passion, and also with knowledge, because sometimes as a 9-year-old, people think that I'm going to come in and ask fun questions, like what's your favorite color, or like simple questions and things like that. And like you said, I try to put research into my questions, and I try to be aware of what's going on in the league. So my questions are not only good questions and questions that make sense, but also questions that will get an answer that will prove to my viewers and to the people that might see it that the WNBA is something that you need to be aware about and something that people should care about.
Now, we worked together following the WNBA season to try to find some college programs you could either follow or some conferences that you could get involved with. How's that going?
That's going. It's going okay so far. I'm really just focusing on Stanford and Notre Dame. So got an ACC school in there. This actually hasn't come out yet, but I recently had an interview with Caitlyn Clark. So that's coming out on She Got Next. So stay tuned. I mean, it's going pretty good. I've reached out to a lot of teams. I haven't heard back from all of them, but I need to send out my second emails for some of those just to make sure that they saw it. But covering Stanford and Notre Dame has been so much fun and so amazing, and I feel very fortunate to be covering some of the best teams in women's college basketball this season.
Well, we don't usually get to break news on Nothing But Net. So breaking that news about your interview with Caitlyn Clark, we'll look forward to it. We've already interviewed Caitlyn Clark, and she is a terrific interview. So I'm glad you and I see, like-minded people here. We think the same about what we like in our players, good shooters and offensive-minded. And if you have any trouble with any college or university that doesn't give you access, you let me know. I'll take care of it for you. Okay? I'll make sure they understand who Pepper Persley is. And we've got to have your voice covering our game. And speaking of that, let's take a look at free agency. The WNBA's got a lot going on, and I know you're paying attention. So what were some of the more shocking pieces of news, or the pieces of news with free agency that you're most excited about?
Well, firstly, Alicia Clark going to the Mystics was something that I did not expect at all. I think that watching her play on the Storm with the team that they had was amazing, and her chemistry and her connection to that community was incredible. But I'm really excited to see her start over, and not start over, but continue her journey with the Mystics. And they've got a heck of a lineup on the Mystics right now, adding another amazing player, an amazing defender to the roster. So I'm super excited to watch that team out there. And then also just the LA Sparks, their big three splitting up. Candace going to the Sky and Chelsea going to the Aces. And I think that those are really interesting choices. That Candace is going for a pay drop, which I thought was surprising. I thought that if she went anywhere, she would want to get more money. So I think that the Sparks departure, that was interesting. And then also Benai Delaney to the Liberty. I think that's big for them, but they also are still in need of a big. Maybe they can get that out of the first pick in the draft. Maybe they'll trade that first pick for a veteran. I don't know. Maybe possibly they'll get Natasha Howard. I don't know. But I think Benai Delaney was really interesting for that team. And there's so much more to go in free agency, and I'm so excited to the rest of it. And I really look forward to the 2021 season.
I think you should add general manager to your list of things that you might like to be, because I know you would be very good in the transaction war room, trying to decide where pieces went, who fit where, and all that. Let me ask you about Candace Parker, because I've known Candace for a long time. I've watched her for a long time, since her college days when she started at Tennessee. As a matter of fact, Candace Parker's very first college game, I did not cover it on television, but I went to it because I wanted to be able to one day say, I saw Candace on her very first college basketball game against Stetson at Tennessee. So when you look at her,
remember you telling me stories about Candace and Pat in my interview with you on Dish with Pepper.
That's right. So I want to ask you, since we know Candace so well, and Candace has such a brilliant career in broadcast media as well, what do you think Candace was thinking about going to Chicago and taking less money to be a part of that team?
Well, firstly, it's home for her. I mean, being in LA it's pretty far from her family, and especially in COVID, I would assume that I would want to have my family at my games, but being closer to home just makes that more likely, because fans from across the country, it would be harder to, most likely due to the virus, to be able to watch those games. So I think partly it might have been that for her, and also just that, the Sky have such an interesting team, and an amazing coach, and I think that Maybe just wanting a change of pace, being with the Sparks for her whole career. Maybe she just wanted to switch it up and to be with a team that's still getting to the top and definitely building their roster, but maybe she's the piece that leads them to being a championship team. And I don't know, but I think it's very interesting. And I'm excited to see her out there in a blue jersey versus a yellow and purple one.
I think if Courtney Vandersloot leads the league in assists, I think she's going to actually have a higher number with playing with Candace, don't you?
That's true. That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, but playing for another amazing point guard would. I'm definitely excited to see how their chemistry can build, because Sluty could definitely get a lot of assists off of Candace. I could see that happening, most definitely.
I can't wait to see it also. I'm looking forward to it. That'll be fun to watch. Okay, so this summer, the WNBA players use their platform collectively to provide information and educate and activate on some social justice issues. And I know that's something that you like to talk about as well. What did you learn from the WNBA players this summer, Pepper?
I learned that something that I already knew, but I learned firsthand that women and women of color and women that are different from each other and women that want to compete against each other and beat each other can find a way to come together and make changes in our society that are really important, right? Because in the Georgia Senate election, like if those both of the Democrats hadn't been elected, this will be an entirely different Senate and an entirely different presidency for Joe Biden. And I think that what they did to raise awareness for what Warnock was doing was crucial for him to win. And I think that just seeing the power of their voices as a little girl is amazing and so inspiring and so powerful. And I also learned that it's best to do something with people that have your back. Because when one of the players says something and maybe that doesn't have a positive response from social media, then the rest of the players, the rest of the WNBA, they always have that person's back. And just being united in that way, I think is very, very, like I was saying before, I always say inspiring, but I mean, it's the right word for the situation. And so I just think that, yeah, just that they do it unified every time is so empowering.
Pepper, you give the best answers, the most well thought out. You never wing anything. You always really speak from the heart, which is really so endearing. It's such a great quality that you carry forward. So I want to ask you, building off of that, about Black History Month. And this is Black History Month. And what does that mean to you? What do you think Black History Month should be about?
I think it should be about celebrating the history and the people and the Black people, of course, that are not always known to the public. Like people that do things that go unnoticed. And a lot of the times, Black people, if they do something amazing and a white person does the same amazing thing, that white person gets highlighted. And maybe a couple people will see that this Black person did that too. Maybe they even did it first, but it's not always highlighted. And I think that all the time, every day, 24/7 is the time to highlight those voices, but Black History Month really gives us a time and a place to specifically try to highlight the voices of Black women and Black men who are doing amazing things and empowering and inspiring things that often just go unnoticed.
I think your mom and dad have to be so proud of you for how well-spoken you are, how much passion you bring to everything that you do, whether it's your schoolwork or it's your violin playing or it's learning about the roles in media and empowering other young women to feel like they can do whatever they want to do. You do all those things, and you may not even realize that you're doing all those things. But as a 9-year-old, it's amazing to talk to you because you're so mature.
Thank you.
So the last thing I want to ask you, Pepper, is because you and I could talk all day. I enjoy speaking to you. You're really fun to ask a lot of questions to, and we don't ask those silly questions. We dive right into it, right? I don't really care what your favorite color is. But here's something I do care about. I want to know from you, so far, of all the things that you've done, including the Women's Sports Foundation this year and your introduction at their annual event, what is one of the most favorite things that you have been able to do so far in your role in the media?
I think that firstly, this answer might be changed after tomorrow. Because tomorrow's National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and I don't know if you know, but the Women's Sports Foundation again gave me the opportunity to do something for them, and specifically to co-host their first Girls Fest with Phaedra Knight and LaChina Robinson. So you can find that on their YouTube channel, live from 4 to 5:30. So that my answer might change after that happens. But right now, I would say that just overall, I'll give a specific moment in a second. Just seeing the smiles on people's faces when they hear my voice was all I really ever wanted at the beginning of the summer, because quarantine really was not great. It kind of sucked, and everybody was just like stuffed inside, and we had to wear masks, and it was just changing everything. And I love being in school, seeing my friends, seeing my teachers, and I thought I would never miss actually having a place to pull all my stuff on my desk, but I miss that now. And so COVID and the pandemic changed a lot for me, and I know it changed a lot for other people. So this summer, what I wanted to do is bring a smile to people's faces, and seeing that how kind of my reasoning elevated, that was still coming back to that. And I was still bringing a smile to people's faces, even if I was not talking about fun things or trying to bring a smile to people's faces anymore. That I was still having that impact. And I would have to say that, well, let's see. Can I give you top 3 things?
Sure. You can give me 3. That's fine.
Yeah, so these are things that I've done. I mean, I'm always honored to be interviewed in this moment and to be written about by other people. And so I could have a long list of those things as well. But I'm going to do a top 3 of things that I've done. So like you mentioned, the annual salute for Women's Sports Foundation, I think that was amazing for me, and I just learned so much from watching that and from being a part of that, and that really raised my platform. So again, I'm grateful to the Women's Sports Foundation for giving me these opportunities. And then I have to say, interviewing Breonna Stewart was also on Instagram Live was also really amazing for me, because just learning so much from such an amazing player, and building that connection with her was amazing as well. And I think that 3, I would say I really enjoy all of the things that I do. And the interview that I did of you, Debbie, and all the things that I've done. So I'm not trying to make anybody feel left out or anything like that, but just the things that I've learned from the most and the connections that I've built through the most. I would say my 3rd one would be my interview with Natasha Cloud, because I'd already had an amazing connection with her, but just hearing her speak live about the social activism, I could never speak like that, not at my age, and what she's doing for the DC community and for the country is amazing. And so I feel lucky to have been a part of that, and to have interviewed her. And so I would say those are my top 3 thus far, but again, that might change tomorrow, and I'm super excited for tomorrow as well.
Pepper, I don't think you'll ever have never, can't, won't, doesn't in your conversations with anyone, because I think you could do whatever you want, and you have set yourself up to be able to be whoever you want. And your parents have done such a great job of raising you to be free to speak and free to do what you want. You're such a lucky little girl, and I'm so glad that you took the time to want to be on this podcast with me. I got to interview you for CBS before, but this is great to have you on the podcast as well.
Yeah, I was super excited. I saw, Debbie sent me an email. Oh my gosh, this might be for her podcast. So I was super excited. I'm super honored to be a part of this.
Well, thank you so much, Pepper, for being with us. And anytime you want to come back, you're always welcome.
Thank you so much.